I'm so excited to be here and thrilled. And I just want to thank everyone here because this is one of the great American traditions. And this is really about what we know about who we are. And so I just want to thank you all. Good morning. Good morning. It's great to be with you. So let's just get started. I've only got 20 minutes. I could go on for hours, but I've got 20 minutes. So here it is. I think we all know this is an inflection moment in the history of our country. This is a moment in time that is requiring us each as individuals and collectively to look in a mirror and ask a question. That question being, who are we? And I think we all know part of the answer to that question is we are better than this. So this is a moment in time that is requiring us to fight for the best of who we are, and fight we will, and this is not a new fight for us. We as Americans have always been in the business of fighting for the best of who we are and fighting for our ideals. And I'll tell you, I'm a daughter of fighters. My parents met when they were active in the civil rights movement in the 1960s. My sister and I, Maya, we joke we grew up surrounded by a bunch of adults who spent full time marching and shouting about this thing called justice. And in fact, many of the heroes of that movement were the lawyers who understood how to translate the passion from the streets to the courtrooms of our country and remind folks of that promise we articulated in 1776 that we are all equal and should be treated that way, which is what inspired me to want to become a lawyer. So we are fighters, and we are born of fighters. And I'll tell you, I was raised also by a mother, my sister Maya and I, our mother, she was all of 5 feet tall. But if you ever met our mother, you would have thought she was 10 feet tall. And she was fierce. You know, she was the kind of parent who would say to us, she'd say to me all the time, Kamala, you may be the first to do many things, make sure you're not the last. She'd say, don't you ever let anyone tell you who you are, you tell them who you are. She said, your life should be judged based on service to others, not self-interest. And my mother, she was tough. If you ever came home in our house, if you ever came home complaining about something, our mother would look at you with a straight face, one hand probably on a hip, and she'd say, well, what are you going to do about it? So I decided to run for president of the United States. There you go. So let's talk for a moment about the current occupant of the White House, shall we? It's context. It's context. So here's a guy who came into office on a slogan that was about Make America Great Again, which of course for many of us said, well, again, exactly for whom? But also it was backward thinking, right? And it caused us all to ask, you know, back to what? Back before the Voting Rights Act? Back before the Civil Rights Act? Back before the Fair Housing Act? Back before federal minimum wage? Back before Roe v. Wade? Because we're not going back. We're not going back. And he came in office making all kinds of promises to folks, and in particular working people. Everyone from farmers here in Iowa to auto workers. Came in making all kinds of promises about how he was going to help out working people. And then what'd he do? He passes a tax bill benefiting the top 1% and the biggest corporations in this country. Then what happens? Engages in a so-called trade policy that was trade by tweet, born out of his fragile ego in a way that was about unilateral action that has resulted in farmers here in this great state looking at bankruptcy, soybeans rotting in bins. It is expected that hundreds of thousands of auto workers may be out of work by the end of the year because of his so-called trade policy. I call it the Trump trade tax. And here's the thing. He betrayed a lot of people. He betrayed a lot of people. So this obviously is an election about what we need to do to turn the page. But it is also about recognizing that we have to fight for the America we believe in, also knowing that we reject the voice that he has provided that has been about sowing hate and division among us. We reject that. It is not reflective of who we are. And I know it to be true. I know who we are. We all have so much more in common than what separates us. And the way I think about it is what I call the 3 in the morning thought. You know, the thing that wakes you up in the middle of the night. Because here's the deal. For the vast majority of us, when we wake up in the middle of the night thinking that thought, it is never through the lens of the party with which we're registered to vote. For the vast majority of us, when we wake up thinking that thought, it is never through the lens of some simplistic demographic some pollster put us in. And for the vast majority of us, when we wake up thinking that thought, it usually has to do with one of just a very few things. Our personal health, the health of our children or our parents. For so many, can I get a job, keep a job, pay the bills by the end of the month, retire with dignity? For our students, can I pay off those student loans? For so many families, can I help my family member get off their opioid addiction? The vast majority of us have so much more in common than what separates us. And that is part of the strength of who we are as a nation. So we will fight for that. And our fight is born out of that knowledge. And so, yes, we must turn the page. And this election is about more than that. Because obviously, dude gotta go. So the point then is, let us also think about writing the next chapter and doing that together. And writing the next chapter based on the America we believe in. The America we believe in, where we say you should only have to have one job, to have a roof over your head and put food on the table. An America we believe in, where we say it is not okay that as of today in America, almost half of our families cannot afford a $400 unexpected expense. It is not reflective of the America we believe in. When in 99% of the counties in this country, if you're a minimum wage worker, you can't afford market rate for a one-bedroom apartment. It is not okay that last year in our country, 12 million people had to take out a loan of, on average, $400 from the payday lender at an interest rate often in excess of 300%. That is not the America we believe in. In the America we believe in, I will tell you, when we win this election, we're going to change the tax code as follows. For families that make less than $100,000 a year, they'll get up to a $6,000 tax credit that you could take home at up to $500 a month, which will make all the difference between those families getting through the end of the month or not. In the America we believe in, we will recognize that one of the things that keeps people up at night is the education of their children. And in the America we believe in, we will pay teachers their value. Because right now in America, we're looking at a situation where teachers on average are paid 11% less than similarly educated professionals. I have met more teachers here in Iowa and around the country who are working 2, sometimes 3 jobs. Our teachers are coming 94% of them out of their own pocket to help pay for school supplies. And here's the thing, there are only two groups of people raising our children. Parents, often with the assistance of grandparents and aunties and uncles, and our teachers. We must pay them their value. So in the America we believe in, we will put in place the first in our nation's history federal investment in closing the teacher pay gap. And here in Iowa, that's $12,200 a year. $12,200 a year. In many places, that's a year's worth of mortgage payments. $12,200 a year, that's a year's worth of grocery bills. $12,200 a year, that means putting a significant dent in student loan debt, which is one of the greatest barriers to our kids coming out of school and enjoying a profession for which they have a passion. In the America we believe in, our babies, elementary, middle, and high school students will not have to go to school and endure a drill during which they are taught about how they need to hide in a closet or crouch in a corner in the event there is a mass shooter roaming the hallways of their school. Those children of ours who come home at night and ask, why did we have to have that drill? To which, of course, our response is, because there are supposed leaders in Washington, D.C., who have failed to have the courage to reject a false choice, which suggests you're either in favor of the Second Amendment or you want to take everyone's guns away, who have failed to have the courage to agree. Fine if you want to go hunting, but we need reasonable gun safety laws in our country, including universal background checks and a renewal of the assault weapons ban. And so in the America we believe in, if Mitch McConnell doesn't call us back to vote on a bill, then when we are elected, I will give the United States Congress 100 days to pull their act together on this and put a bill on my desk for signature. And if they do not, I am prepared to take executive action to put in place a comprehensive background check requirement, to require the ATF to take the licenses of gun dealers who violate the law, and by executive action to ban the importation of assault weapons into our country. It is time to take action. In the America we believe in, we will agree that access to health care should be a right of everyone's and not a privilege of just those who can afford it. So we will put in place, knowing this is one of the issues that keeps people up at night, we will put in place a Medicare for All plan, which I have proposed, which will offer everyone health care without regard to cost, put the insurance companies in check so there will be no deductibles, no co-pays. You will still have access to either a public or private plan and expand services and benefits. Because in the America we believe in, we know that this is a human rights issue, it is a civil rights issue, it is a moral issue, and we must do better. In the America we believe in, we will agree that one of the issues that keeps us up at night is the security of our homeland. And we need to have a commander-in-chief who understands her greatest priority is concerning herself with the safety and security of our nation, as opposed to the current commander-in-chief, who on the issue of the fact of Russia's interference in the election of the President of the United States prefers to take the word of the Russian president over the word of the American intelligence community, who on the subject of an American student who was tortured and later died prefers to take the word of a North Korean dictator over the word of the American intelligence community. That on the subject of a journalist who was assassinated, a journalist who had American credentials, prefers to take the word of a Saudi prince over the word of the American intelligence community. We need a new commander-in-chief. So I'll say this, listen, I know that a lot of us over the last 2 years and some months, we've been wondering, how's this all going to turn out? What's happening? We've been throwing objects at that inanimate object called a television, going through individual and group therapy, trying to figure it all out. But here's the thing I want to remind all of the friends. In our march toward 2020, let us remember that one of the greatest strengths about who we are as a nation and as a people is that by our very nature, we are aspirational. We are a nation that was founded on noble ideals. The ideals that were present when we wrote the Constitution of the United States and all of its amendments, and the Bill of Rights and the Declaration of Independence and those words we spoke in 1776 that we are all equal and should be treated that way, we are aspirational. We are also clear-eyed. We've not yet reached those ideals. But the strength of who we are is we always fight to get there. And so fight we will. And fight we must, knowing this is a fight that is born out of optimism. This is a fight that is born out of knowing what can be and believing in what can be, unburdened by what has been. This is a fight that is not only for the soul of our country. This is a fight born out of love of country. And this, therefore, is a fight we will win. Thank you, Iowa. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. Thank you, Iowa. I've got a couple minutes.
August 28th is the anniversary of King's I Have a Dream speech. Yeah. What are you going to do? Why are you, as a candidate, uniquely qualified to march through and smash down Trump's police bloody Sunday wall?
Why am I uniquely qualified to get the job done? Well, I'm going to let you say that. To smash through.
Why are you, Senator Harris, uniquely qualified to march through and smash down Trump's bloody Sunday wall?
So part of what needs to happen is this. To get through and turn the next page, to write the next chapter, we need to be able to successfully prosecute the case against 4 more years of Donald Trump, and I think it will take a prosecutor to do that. And we got a rap sheet, and it's long. Let's look at the evidence. A tax bill that benefits the top 1% and the biggest corporations in America, to the point that 60 of the biggest corporations in the United States paid no taxes last year. Who here paid no taxes last year? Let's talk about the trade policy that is resulting in direct harm to working families in America. Let's talk about a policy that is about putting babies in cages and separating children from their parents in the name of border security, when in fact what it is a human rights abuse being committed by the United States government. Let's talk about a failure to recognize, and our farmers and everybody here knows it, climate change is real. It is a crisis. It is caused by human behaviors which can be changed without much change to our lifestyle. It represents an existential threat to who we are as human beings, and we can do something about it. Instead of the current occupant of the White House, who is pushing science fiction instead of science fact to our collective peril. He talks about wind turbines. Look, here in Iowa, you guys are a leader in this. 40% of Iowa's electricity comes from renewable energies. You're a model, but yet we got the guy in the White House who is saying wind turbines cause cancer. I love Governor Inslee's line. I'm going to give him a hat tip on it. He says, turbines don't cause cancer, they cause jobs. So we got to be able to prosecute the case against him. And I'm going to tell you something. You know, the pundits will talk about and compare, and I think overly compare, 2016 to 2020. 2020 will not be 2016. 2020 will not be 2016. There is now, I call it a rap sheet, there is now a lot of evidence that has spoken to the American people who know those who believed in him were betrayed, who know that we expect that the person who occupies that most precious seat, which is our government, not his, that is, we are a government for the people, by the people, of the people. We expect that the President of the United States will always know that when she has this microphone in her hand, it is a very, very powerful force and must always be used not to beat people down, but to lift people up. That's who we are. And so my time is up. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Headline, Dude gotta go. Iowa Sinclair, Dude gotta go. Off the record, go away.
All right, Barbara, where are you?
Over here.
Hi, Barbara.
Hi, Senator. Your policy over guns got one of the largest applauses. And I'm curious what you think, specifically with executive action, the criticism that kind of executive action could get tangled in some sort of litigation.
Well, no, I mean, we've done an analysis of it. Congress vests in the president certain authorities. And among them is the authority to be concerned about what passes through commerce, for example. And in any event, we've done the legal research on it, and I'm not concerned about it. I'm sure there will be challenges, but it's strong. And then the bottom line is this: our policy and my preparedness to take executive action is just frankly because I'm fed up. Congress has done nothing. I mean, even at this most latest tragedy. Well, we may bring people back, we may do something, and all these baby steps. People don't have time for this. And we keep having tragedy after tragedy. Somebody asked me, well, maybe this tragedy will spur some action. Well, this tragedy is as tragic as each one we've seen. And there has been no action over many years. So yes, I am prepared to take an executive action and to actually do something. And I believe, and I'm pretty confident, that it will pass constitutional muster.
Caitlin, right here. Caitlin.
Do you believe the president is a white supremacist? And how can you add white supremacy legislatively? Do you have any plans to do so?
Let me tell you the concern I have with that question. And it's being asked a lot. It begins and ends with the question and then the answer to that, as opposed to recognizing the long history in the United States of this as an issue, the issue of hate. I, as a prosecutor, as a line prosecutor, handled hate crimes. As the Attorney General running the California Department of Justice, the second largest Department of Justice in the United States, I would publish hate crime reports every year. This is not new in America. Hate is not new. Hate that takes the form of racism, anti-Semitism, homophobia, transphobia, Islamophobia is not new in our country. And I will not participate in a conversation that simplifies this issue without recognizing, one, the history, speaking truth about it, and recognizing that it happened before this guy was in the White House. It will continue after this guy in the White House. He is certainly fanning the flames of hate, no question about that. But if we're going to have this conversation, let's have it in a meaningful way. Because, you know, when we have seen everything from what happened in Poway to the Tree of Life Synagogue to Charlottesville to what happened in El Paso, we should all be having a conversation that is partly looking in the mirror to say, where have we been on this and what are we prepared to do?
But just to follow up, just policy-wise, to combat white supremacy, as you say.
Part of it has to be we have to, unlike what this administration and this president has done, and I've been talking about this for months and months, which is they shut down the resources on domestic terrorism. They just shut it down. In terms of putting resources and putting support into it and acknowledging that it is real and that it must be treated as what it is, domestic terrorism. So immediately, I would completely reform that perspective around the priority. Also, it's about the microphone that the President of the United States has, which in a profound way informs perception about an issue. A perception about an issue like race, or religion, or sexual orientation, or, you know, and then just go down the list. And this president has used the very precious tool of that microphone in a way that has been, in my opinion, about defiling the power of the office of the President of the United States, and highly irresponsible, obviously.
Senator, thank you. You had a very enthusiastic crowd here also last night. I know not everything is about the polls, and I know it's early, but the latest poll had you tipping here in Iowa. How do you make up more ground? How do you gain on especially Vice President Biden and Elizabeth Warren?
So, first of all, I love being in Iowa, and each time I come, I really do, I gain a lot from it. I gain perspective from it, and there's certainly momentum in our campaign. We have over 65 staff in Iowa. We've been staffing up over a period of time. And, you know, there are people in this race who have had national profiles for many years. I'm still introducing myself to people. And it will be a process. And with each step that we take, we are gaining ground and building momentum, and I feel good about it. Yeah.
The FBI is investigating Jeffrey Epstein's suicide. Your experience as a prosecutor, you know, how does this happen when he's supposed to be on suicide watch? And secondly, how do victims get justice? I actually have tracked deaths in custody when I was Attorney General, and there are a lot of issues to unpack in that. I think that the case is obviously very new, and we'll see what the circumstances are. I have no inside information about it. But certainly when we are talking about what we are doing in prisons, there is a lot of reform that is needed. And that relates to everything I've worked on for years around what we need in solitary confinement of not only adults, but all minors. Work we need to do around incarcerated women that I have been a champion on. Where women are shackled even during pregnancy and childbirth. So there is a lot of work to do across the board in terms of oversight and accountability as it relates to prisons. I will also say on that subject that we also have to understand that this administration has really supported also private prisons, and when I'm elected I will shut them down. I will shut down private detention centers, because we never want to be in the business of having United States taxpayer dollars go to an industry by its very business model is about profiting off the incarceration of other human beings, including what I saw when I went to Homestead, Florida, which was a private detention facility that currently houses 2,700 children in a private detention facility, which means that your taxpayer dollars are going to fund the profit of the incarceration of children.
So, this gentleman right here.
Hi.
It's about trade, because it's hugely important to the state.
Yes, of course.
You oppose the NAFTA. What's your solution? Why
Well, so a number of things. One, let's just talk about the current state of affairs, where Donald Trump has conducted trade policy by tweet, right? He came to Iowa making all kinds of promises to farmers, and he has betrayed them. So in a unilateral way, clearly without considering the harm that would result from what he did, he just cut off a market to our farmers that they'd been cultivating for well over a decade. And so now they're looking at bankruptcy with soybeans rotting in bins. So on the issue of trade, one, let's just step back for a moment and also remember, more than one party. Because you're trading with somebody else. And usually there are a few parties involved. So we have to conduct trade policy in a way that acknowledges that there are many relationships and many folks who are going to be at play in that. He didn't do that. It was unilateral. I will conduct trade policy in a way that understands the negotiation and the leverage we have with our allies around the world. Two, trade policy for me is always going to be about protecting American workers and protecting our environment and having those as part of our priorities. And that it is for that reason and so many others that I am not in favor of what I call NAFTA 2.0.
Senator, Iowa sent President Obama to the White House twice, but overwhelmingly went for President Trump in 2016. What's your plan to win Northwest Trump voters?
I am going to spend my time in Iowa and work on earning the support of every Iowan. And my agenda, which I call the 3 a.m. agenda, is born out of my fundamental belief that
the vast majority of us have so much more in common, and that people want a president who is a problem-solving president. And the problems are the problems that keep them up at night, that wake them up in the middle of the night. That's why I call it my 3 a.m. agenda. So as I talked about out there, it's about health care. It's about can they get a job and keep a job. It's about getting through the end of the month and being able to pay the bills. It's about their children and their education. It's about issues like trade. And these are my priorities, and I know that they speak to the vast majority of us, regardless of the party with which you're registered to vote.
Time for one more, Francesca, right there.
Senator Harris, since it's the last one, twofold question. One, do you believe that Walmart should stop selling guns? And then secondly, back on Jeffrey Epstein, do you also support a congressional investigation into his suicide and his crimes?
I don't know enough about the Epstein case to comment on that. I just heard about it. But I will say on the issue of Walmart, yeah, they should stop selling guns. I do believe that. I mean, it's just, we need background checks. Let's just start with that. We need background checks, and we need people to be, as I've said, responsible in the way that they are selling guns. So it's not about everyone needs to stop selling guns, but we absolutely need to have checks and balances on it, and part of that is we need background checks. And so that's where I begin and end. If they participate in background checks, then fine. But right now they're not. And that's why I said that.
Would you end the filibuster to pass mass incarceration reform? Good to see you again.
That from Senator Kamala Harris. Of course, a number of questions on the breaking story this morning, the apparent suicide of Jeffrey Epstein, 66 years old, found dead, found unresponsive this morning, and questions to Senator Kamala Harris about his suicide and what it means for the case. Of course, it is breaking news, so she didn't want to comment too much in terms of what it all means, but we are live from the Des Moines, Iowa, the Iowa State Fair in Des Moines, just a couple of miles from downtown Des Moines, and coming up in about a minute, you're going to hear from Ohio